Hi everyone, Nicole Littman with Aurelian Coaching. Thanks for joining this week. This week's theme for the Facebook Live is public speaking. So whether it's a big conference and you have to get up at the podium, or you're being asked to do a presentation in front of team members and colleagues, or if you're even just talking to your boss's boss, public speaking and how you can apply a different mindset or a different approach to public speaking. So let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about my complete and utter fail at public speaking. Are you ready? So this is when I was pretty early on in my career. And in that industry, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me to be asked to speak at a conference. You had people who were paying thousands of dollars to hear experts in the industry teach them about what they needed to know. And so I was pretty early on in my career, and being asked to go in front of others and speak at the podium was something that I was really nervous about and really, really wanted to do and do well. So it wasn't a matter of the content. Like, I had absolute command of the content. I knew all this stuff like the back of my hand. So first mistake I made was to be overly reliant on slides. I spent all my time on the slides. In fact, the first thing I did when I heard that I was going to be on the podium at this conference was I went right back to my desk and I opened up a PowerPoint document. And I started doing charts and graphs and bullet points and moving slides around and like doing all this stuff, because I thought, I know what I need to say. I don't need to practice what I need to say. It's all up here. So I remember sending my boss, this should have been clue number one. I sent my boss a very early version of my slides. And I remember he kind of looked at them and he's like, yeah, that's fine. Okay, keep going. I don't need to see him again. And I remember being surprised, like, where's all the feedback? Where's all the critical input that I need on my slides? What was going on was his approach was, well, who cares about the slides? It's all about what you have to say, and you have commanded this stuff, so I'm not worried. But to me, this was my first misstep. I thought it was all about the slides. I thought the key to a dynamic presentation was having super interesting slides that everybody could look at. So I continued to work on the slides and I tweaked them and tweaked them and tweaked them until it was the night before I was scheduled to go on. And I thought, I should probably do a dry run. Yeah, the night before, okay? And so I put up my beautiful PowerPoint slide deck on my computer, and I went, I didn't even know how to start. Like, oh, should I introduce myself? Is somebody going to introduce me? Like, and I started to go through this, and my transitions between the slides were so awful and so clunky. And guys, to take what was in my head and verbalize it, it wasn't as easy and as intuitive as I thought it should be. So 6 o'clock turned into 8 o'clock, turned into 10 o'clock, and I was still doing these dry runs. So I got up to the podium the next morning, and it probably felt worse than it was. And look, there's been a lot of time and distance since that presentation, but boy, at the time I thought it's a good thing people are getting a copy of these slides after the conference, because I'm not doing a good job like articulating any of this. Oh man, I learned a lot from that experience. And that is some of the stuff that we're talking about in Skill Masters this week. So if you go to aureliancoaching.com and you hit the blog posts, all the blogs this week hit this topic of public speaking. And I talk about the number one thing that I learned from this experience, and that is to tell a story. Tell a story. So what story did I want to tell? It wasn't until later on in my career that I found the magic of case studies. Guys, I don't care what industry you're in, find the case studies. Then you don't have to make stuff up. It's all right there. It was a beautiful thing where I could just point to companies and people that my audience recognized, right? And just get beyond the headlines and give them an insider view on how that story played out. Now, I wasn't sharing anything confidential. It was all a matter of public record, but who has time to delve into the details? You just read the headlines. Well, I was bringing that to my presentations. I was crafting a story and I was building it off of something that actually happened. Case studies are beautiful. Always do case studies if you can manage it. The other thing that I learned besides telling a story was to not rely on industry jargon. I was doing that a lot. And in fact, when I started to wise up to that and I started managing other people, and I noticed that their deliverables and a lot of their content used words and phrases as crutches, right? What I told them to do, and this was really hard, but it's so good. What I told them to do is rewrite the whole thing without using this phrase or that term. It was hard. It was super hard, but they did it. And you know what? It was so much better. It was so much better. Keep it simple. Talk to your audience the way you talk to your friends, right? Use simple language. And what ended up happening was their presentations and their deliverables were so much cleaner and they were so much better. And I said, if you want, now you can go back and in a mindful way, if you wanted to go back and insert that crutch phrase, if you think it'll enhance the meaning and the tenor of the presentation, you can go back and do that. And you know what? Most of the time they actually didn't, because simple was better. So those are the things that I learned. A presentation is a speech because I think of speeches and they're like, I think of politicians, right? Politicians doing stump speeches, and they don't have slides behind them. They just have to talk and they have to tell a story. So whatever you think about politicians, that's fine. But when it boils down to it, it's a great way to approach public speaking. Tell a story, keep it simple. So another thing that I learned was to start strong. So, and I'm not talking about getting out there and telling a joke and being funny or all of that can be applied, absolutely, if you want to. But what I'm talking about is know the first 10 to 15% of your presentation like the back of your hand. Because at least in my experience, all of the nerves, all of the anxiety about public speaking was just about getting up there and getting started. Okay, so I made sure that if I could at least get over the hump of walking up those steps. Have you guys done this before? If you've had to go to go up to a podium and you have to walk up the steps, and the whole time I'm thinking, I really hope I don't have a Jennifer Lawrence moment right here and just fall flat on my face as I'm walking up the steps to the podium. So nervous, guys, so nervous. So when you start, that is the height of all the anxiety and all the stress and the pressure. And so if you focus on the first 5 minutes, that first 10% or whatever it is of the presentation, and you practice that piece over and over again, you get over the hump of those really critical initial jitters, and you can probably carry it through reasonably well. So those are my tips. Now, if you are a part of Skill Masters, you'll be getting an email tomorrow with all of this summarized, as well as some tools to help you practice a different mindset and a different approach to public speaking. So look for that in your email inbox. You can join at aureliancoaching.com, so it's free. It involves just, a weekly email and some tools to help you practice some of these skills. And if you are a part of Skill Masters and there's a topic that you want to put on the agenda and you want me to talk about, let me know. And I'm happy to fold that in. Now, I do have a treat for tomorrow's blog post. Tune in, because I have an interview with a public speaking expert. She's a guru. I actually came across her through some separate networking opportunity, and I was actually talking about what I needed from her. And when she mentioned that she was a public speaking guru, I was like, well, isn't that interesting? This week's topic is public speaking. So I was able to tap into her for her insights. And you guys know Aurelian Coaching. It's all about not just tips and tricks, but a totally new mindset and approach to tackling these challenges and issues in workplace and in home. And I love, love, love her mindset and approach to public speaking. So check it out. Her name is Victoria Liasnansky. Liasnansky. Isn't that a beautiful name? And you can find her on byvictorial.com. Check out the blog post tomorrow. She's got some beautiful insight and a really wonderful way of thinking and approaching public speaking. So check that out. Next week's topic is resilience. So we've talked about in Skill Masters before about this concept of failure and how to think of failure a little bit differently. And I got some follow-up questions from folks on kind of the aftermath. And very practically speaking, how do you bounce back when you make a pretty critical mistake? So the topic that we've talked about before is failure and mitigating all the downward spiral thoughts about failure and how to approach it and how to actually chase after failure because of what you learn from it. But when it feels like it's the end of the world, because sometimes it does, when you make a pretty critical mistake, what next? So that's going to be the topic for next week, bouncing back from mistakes, resilience, all of that. What's the mindset? What's the approach that you can apply to that? So if you are interested, sign up for Aurelian Skill Masters at aureliancoaching.com. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye now.